Good afternoon. My name is Ariel Prieto. I am currently in Professor Migala's Math 1350 class. Um, just gonna give this a go. Uh, Pretty cool that Professor Migala is covering this topic. I feel like it's such a fluent topic in everybody's life these days. So to actually conduct some research using your students' opinions and experiences can contribute to some pretty cool responses and new thoughts. So, getting into the questions we're touching on today, the grade that I have wanted to teach when I first fathomed stepping in and committing to being an educator, I've always envisioned and wanted the high school setting, but I currently do have a job in a middle school, so just spending a good amount of time with those kiddos has really pivoted my thought process to maybe at least starting in the middle school ages. Of course, just because of comfortability, but also I feel like that age, these students are very impressionable, more so than, 15 years old and older. But I feel like 12, 13, 14, these kids are really absorbing information and really deciding what they want to do with what they've learned. I've never been the biggest fan of mathematics, but of course, it is a non negotiable. It is a part of everyday life, whether we recognize it or not. I think for that reason, I can really appreciate its practicality, how black and white it is. Math, honestly, is one of the very few last, I guess, just true pieces of information that we're learning. It's far from an opinion. It's an answer is either correct or incorrect, which a lot of these days people and things would like to portray that way, but at the end of the day, that's not it. But math, again, is very black and white when I think we live in a very gray world, both academically and just in our lives. Uh, Pivoting to elementary school settings, I think there's an array of issues in elementary schools. But if we start focusing on the topic of artificial intelligence, I think in the grand scheme of things, the issues that come up in these settings is that all the information being introduced is very opinions based, as opposed to just facts and history, regardless of how certain groups might feel about it, just the true facts of what took place. I think there's too many textbooks that are curating, picking and choosing what's being written and published and introduced, rather than just laying out what happened and letting individuals decipher that for themselves. Um, Issues that I see with AI being used by elementary school students. Um, I apologize. Um, I think these two questions feed off of each other, but if I think that AI used by elementary school students is a good idea, I think it's neither here nor there. I mean, it's both. I think that it's very impressive, but it can also be very dangerous, especially for elementary school students specifically. I think the dangers again bounce off of the fact that whatever type of responses and answers that are being formulated for them through these sites and applications and resources are very limited. It even though it's a artificial intelligence, artificial technology that they're using, it did take a real person and, somebody to construct what it is now putting out. So I have a hard time accepting and believing that whoever constructed the response you are reading um, is giving you A through Z answers rather than just inserting A, B, and C and letting that be what the consumer is now um, believing and accepting. I think that just really limits and narrows the scope of information that we are supposed to be taught and then deciphering for ourselves as individuals. On the other side of the same token, I think it's beyond impressive if, particularly elementary school students, are using AI more so of the ability to function and maneuver such programs. If I rewind and try to imagine myself with this, not only is the concept of using these platforms so intense, but I mean, for them to understand how to access and insert certain questions and thoughts, that alone is very impressive. So that does just emphasize that these kids are so capable. It's just going to be very unfortunate when they are taking the initial pieces of info that are being introduced and taught to them rather than diving a bit deeper and exploring other resources of information that have been established well beyond any of our years. So that's going to be tough. I do think that when and if elementary school students use AI, it's for all things from helping them understand the material to doing the work for them. I think very innocently, maybe sometimes it starts off as they just need a further explanation or another type of example for a topic that's being covered. Or, when they're elementary school students, a lot of the info and curriculum that they're hearing for the first time. So when they want to explore on their own a bit deeper, they now pivot towards AI, considering that they've heard this concept so fluently. And once they're there and they see how accessible and easy these answers that they're being given are to have, been given to them, I think that's where the lines get a bit blurry, because then they might just invest strictly learning and getting all of their answers through these technologies rather than just maybe having actually paid attention in class or using the formulas that teachers gave them, etc. So plugging in the college group into this same conversation, I don't think strays very different from elementary to college. I think excuse me. I think, again, students at that age or in these settings turn to AI as a form of like research and data, but because of just how easy it is to be given pieces of information, students in those vigorous settings, if easy avenues of final products are being given to us, to be so frank, these kids have a number of other things that they have to worry about, want to invest their time in. So if they can count on something that gives them an answer in 5 seconds, why would they spend 5 days, using or attempting to go to the library, use textbooks, interview peers and people of professions? That takes work, and that used to be the primary source of learning and gathering info from. You want to learn you want to count on all these different sources, but now it's at your fingertips, even though there's a variety of applications that we could use. At the end of the day, just being given that quick and easy single response, I think, is the downfall that we all are going to face. It really just narrows one thinking to this, just whatever first answer comes in front of me, instead of allowing myself as the individual to, broaden my scope and collect information from here and there. If it's in front of me, if it just sounds polished and good enough, unfortunately that's gonna be everyone's answer. And then quite frankly, everyone's answers and responses and opinions are gonna start looking so much alike, which is so unfortunate, because in hindsight, it's not even their own opinions. It's opinions that they've gathered from these technologies and, artificial platforms that originated as someone else's thoughts. So they have just incoherently taken over what someone else believed as their own beliefs, and now there's just a bunch of like-minded individuals, which maybe is going to paint the developing world to be one way or another, rather than allowing for these gray areas that make us individuals. It's going to be really unfortunate. I feel like the only way that we've been able to develop education and curriculums is because everyone has had and contributed all these different thoughts and opinions, which just make sense in their own degree in certain ways. But now if you only have this end and this end, and you allow for no space in between simply because we're not looking past what we've been given, it's gonna be a very tricky world to navigate. And especially when you do have your people, once in a blue moon, that actually take the time to question what they've been given. I think it's going to be so unfortunate how quickly they're going to be shut down and told that they're incorrect just because their response is different. Not because it's incorrect, but because we've just convinced ourselves so much so that what we're being told and fed is correct, when it's not to say that it's not. It's just there's an array of possibilities and answers, and it's like the old saying, there's no one true way how to do something, how to act, how to be, but just feeding into these technologies, we're inevitably people are going to believe that. And I got semi off topic there, but it's the truth with such a heavy idea like this. Pivoting to the types of applications, AI applications that are being used amongst college students, I'm just going to speak from my own usage. Of course, I have, explored some forms of AI. I know there's a variety of platforms and all of that's out now, but the three that I would emphasize, ChatGPT, Canva, and I do very much consider Google artificial intelligence, because for so long we all knew it as a search engine, which it's doing just that, and it's still giving me a vast array of different sites and links and pictures and videos, and which I think is great. But at the end of the day, I feel like that Google search could go on forever. But of course, it's giving us, for example, 50 different possibilities that we've all just kind of depended on. We click the ones that sound a bit better. We click the ones that you don't have to pay for, and all of those things. But I think the difference between Google and the ChatGPTs or whatever is that rather than Google giving you 50 responses, ChatGPT is going to give you 5. And now again, that scope is just shrinking and narrowing itself, and as a consumer, if I'm really just wanting the quick answer, and if any answer is a good enough answer, that's the tricky part. Yeah, so do I think that AI in education will hurt students in the long run? I guess my overall answer, based off of everything I've shared, is yes. Just again, because if students' dependency is gonna revolve around the single answers that have been given to them, it's just really gonna take away from the possibility of exploration and formulation that we all rightfully have. It does take a bit more effort to explore different angles and pages and chapters of things, both from an academic standpoint and not. But these platforms are really allowing the concept of removing the work portion and just being given and given and given, and that really dilutes the meaning of what education was funded off of, what the workforce, being in a really a competitive, giving you a fair chance. It's not what as an individual. It's going to be the better Hearst answer from whichever platform you looked up your interview questions on, or however. So if educators and students allowed themselves to use AI with many other resources, then I think, yes, just like anything else that we've ever been introduced to in the classroom, it can be a tool, and it can be a very generous and helpful tool. But if it is the sole tool that we use and make our lesson plans off of, our answers, our excerpts to read, if we just depend on that, we are really going to hold ourselves back more than advance ourselves, which is the intent that we're being convinced of, and we believe we're doing. But unfortunately, I think we're going to go a bit backwards if we just invest our entire livelihoods on concepts like artificial intelligence. As an individual, I would just really hate to see communities and people steer themselves away from everything else we've been given. Sounds great because we've been given it, and it's quick and it's easy, but we've been given 24 hours of every single day that we all continue to have, and so much can be seen and done and heard in time if we just allow ourselves to think past what we're looking at, what we're reading, the thing we have in our hand all of the time. It's a tricky space to be in these days, but we just have to remember, this is yet just another seasoning in our delectant soup of consumerism, and let it be just that, just be a single seasoning in this plethora of seasonings that we have. When they all come together, they can complement each other really well. But if you just were to put salt in this soup of current day education, the truth is that probably just wouldn't be enough. Don't forget to add a handful of others, just to make it that much better. Thank you.